board met tonight in executive session. We're now ready to continue with the public portion of our meeting. We had no correspondence this week. The President's report, I wanted to honor and will remember two people. The first one is George Webster, who most of you probably don't know, but his wife Terry was on the board and probably back in the 80s. Terry and George lived in Glenridge. Allie knew them. Your mom knew them better. For a number of years, Terry Webster was largely responsible for Glenridge being a historic district. Her husband George was on many boards and committees. She was on the board. George passed away at the age of 90 last week. And then I want to, on your addendum tonight, is the retirement notice for high school nurse Donna Doria, who has taken care of our children here for many, many years. She is a wonderful person. She is tough, but she is caring, and it will be a big hole in the fabric of life in the high school. I also wanted to say that today our acting Commissioner of Education, Dr. Repollet, was confirmed by the Senate Judiciary Committee after a 2.5-hour hearing. He was grilled on absolutely every subject, including state aid, park, charter schools, the validity of the whole funding formula. He came out very well. So it's nice. He's formerly superintendent in Asbury Park and principal in Carteret. He has been a practicing educator. He did very well in the hearing, so we were off to a good start with Dr. Repollet. And that is all for the board president.
You're
Board president's report.
You're the board president today.
You're the superintendent.
Just a couple quick announcements, and I'm going to get to the preliminary budget presentation. We did have another snow day. That means the week of April break has just gotten a little shorter. We'll be attending school on that Thursday and Friday. I believe it's April 19th and 20th. So plan appropriately. Steal some thunder from Allie. Glenridge Education Foundation Gala, April 7th. I know they've mailed some invitations, some have gone out electronically. They've done so much for us for the last 25 years, and your attendance would be a great way of showing an appreciation for all the support they've given the district. I want to recognize Tyler Liddy, who was named first team all Group 1 in boys basketball. It's great to get that recognition. Tyler's the son of Tim Liddy, our athletic director and administrator here in this building. Tyler's a tremendous athlete and a well-deserved honor for him. Donna Doria came to see me last week, and I was a little surprised, to be honest. I didn't expect that. Sometimes you know what's coming. I had no idea this retirement was coming. I was an assistant principal at the high school at the time that Donna was hired. We worked together for a number of years. The school nurse almost becomes a pseudo-admin at times. There's just, you're just dealing with them because of the emergency situations, just concerns about students' health. You have a lot of more interaction with the school nurse and some other staff members. That she's just a terrific person who cares so much about the students. And it's going to be tough. It's always tough to lose someone of the school nurse, and just what she brought to the school is going to be difficult to replace. But I want to wish her the best. I know she loves being a grandmother, and she's looking forward to spending time with her grandchildren. And that being said, we're going to go turn around to preliminary budget. Just to go review the process real quick. Our budget process starts very early in the school year. Usually, beginning of October, I start talking to the administrators to start compiling some needs that you're going to need for next school year. And that's a tough discussion when you just started the school year to start planning for the following school year. The Finance Committee meets throughout the school year to discuss where we are with our current budget, but also try and determine where we're going to be come this time. Our preliminary budget report is today. It was actually moved back because of the new governor, so the new governor had
extra week to get out the budget reports to us, and that has our state aid numbers to it. After tonight's approval, hopefully approval, otherwise we're going to have an emergency meeting, we submit it to the county. The county will review the budget, hopefully give us a thumbs up. If they have questions or recommendation, it is a preliminary budget. It gives us an opportunity to review some of their concerns if they have any. The Finance Committee will continue to look. There's still information that we don't have at this time. We're still shopping around health benefits and waiting from our vendor to give us a number of what a percent increase will be for next year. And that really is a large cost item in our budget, and it drives where we're going to be. April 30th, we will have at that board meeting the final presentation, and the board will vote to approve the final budget for next school year, and then that gets submitted to the DOE and the county. So when we start talking about budget, it's revenue versus expenses, and with revenue we have two biggest factors are our tax levy and our state aid. We like to make reference to the 2010-11 school year because after that year really initiated a lot of change for school districts throughout the state. So our tax levy at that time was 3.26%, which is a high percent, especially when you start comparing it to where we've been the last several years. But our state aid was zero, and that's when former Governor Christie cut state aid to districts. We lost $1.2 million in state aid that year. And that's probably why you're seeing a higher percentage of a tax levy, because we didn't receive any state aid. And that's also the year we had a lot of cuts personnel-wise in the district. Throughout the years, we're somewhere, hopefully we can get around 2%. Out of the last 3 years, we were only at 2% once. This budget preliminary projection is to be again at 2%, and that's the cap that the state has set for schools. You can go above that 2% if there's enrollment increases, healthcare cost increases, you had waivers that you didn't use previous years. There's opportunities to go above that 2%, but we're looking to stay at 2% for the next school year. Our state aid number, again, roughly 8 years ago, we were at 0. States slowly started bringing some of that aid back to us. Last year, when we did the budget presentation, we were flat from the previous year with state aid. After we approved the budget, the state then granted our district another $75,000 in state aid, which was terrific. We're using it to make some improvements at the high school, facility-wise. And then this year, with the new governor, Governor Murphy, released the numbers March 15th, I believe they came out. And in those numbers, Glen Ridge got a 10.5% increase in state aid, which is, again, great to hear. That we're seeing some increases in A's, which helps us keep that 2% at 2%. It's also, realistic looking at it. 8 years ago, we were at $1.2 million. We're still not where we were 8 years ago. And that's something that I keep in the forefront of our thinking as we move forward and look at our state aid. This will be posted tomorrow. It's tough to see these numbers on the screen. The light blue number represents Glen Ridge aid over the year. So in 2009, we received $1.2 million. We received all the aid that was granted to us under the new school funding formula. And slowly you can start seeing the changes. Again, the light blue is what Glen Ridge received in aid. The dark blue represents what the gap of what would have put us at what we should receive under the funding formula. So in that 2011 year, we didn't receive any state aid, so that gap was an entire amount. When you start looking at this, in 2018, this coming school year budget, we're at, we're supposed to be at $1.3 million for state aid, roughly. We're going to be receiving $900,000. We're still short that difference at $400,000, or roughly $300,000. And that makes a big difference in a small school. $300,000, we're talking roughly about 4 staff members if we want to look at personnel. And personnel and benefits really drive our budget. Those are our biggest expenses. So again, looking at our revenue, I put up a slide just so you can start comparing the last few years and what we're proposing for next school year. Our biggest revenue items is our local tax levy and our state aid. We do have some other items in there. Tuition is what we're charging pre-K students. If we have out-of-district students also, we get a few of them every year. But most of those grants, we do get some grants through Title I and some special ed grants. But most of our items from revenues, local tax levy and state aid. And this number here has to match up with expenses. And then you start looking at our expenses. On the sheet that was up front, it's really a more detailed breakdown of these items. If you want to see how instruction support services and those items break down to a little bit more detail. When it comes to expenses, you're again looking at a lot at personnel. Instructional expenses are your teachers, their salaries, supplies for the classrooms, those type of items will be under instruction. Support services, you're looking at a lot of different items. Anything support-wise, guidance counselors, nurses, administration, child study team. Those are all the type of items that would fall under expenditures, support services, capital expenditures, just items for the facilities. Our grants are just, again, the Title I special ed grants, those numbers are the same. Whatever we bring in, we must spend with grant money. And as I mentioned before, your expense and your revenue counts have to be equal. When we start looking at our expenses, roughly your payroll and benefits are going to represent 80% of a school budget, or 80 to 85% of your budget. So when we start looking at how does this affect the taxpayer, and the average assessed house value in Glen Ridge is basically $548,000. The tax increase for next year will be $351, and that's broken up operation-wise, $177 per year. Our debt service, this is what we approved last March. Our increased debt service is for the new bond referendum, and that will be $174 a year. The debt service is designed that the first few years, we're not incurring as much cost with that, realizing that we have an expiring debt service coming February of 2022. So it was designed not to have its full effect until the old debt service retires. So you get an idea, it's roughly $29 a month that's going to affect the taxpayer. What's nice about this budget, last year at this time I was talking about some items we had to cut back in the schools. We're maintaining all current positions with this budget. This includes the extra section that we have down at Forest and the extra section we have at Ridgewood. In the 4th grade, they have 7 sections down there. It includes adding an assistant principal at the high school. One of an item that we've talked about a lot is the middle school program. 8 years ago, we had an assistant principal for the middle school program. When our state aid was cut to 0, that position was eliminated. We were looking probably about 110 to 120 kids in a grade level at that time. We're now at 150 kids in a grade level. So we have more students, less administrators than what we previously had. And we have a greater need additional mandates that have been added to the schools the last several years. So it's been something that's been discussed the last several years. On the board level, it was just a matter of could we afford to bring it in. Based on the way we're budgeting our increased state aid, we were able to fit that in. We additional math teacher at the high school, again, based on needs. We have some very large math classes. We don't have staff to cut some of those class sizes down. So in order to deal with the demands at the math department, we need to add a math teacher. And then we want to expand Effective School Solution, ESS. ESS is at the high school right now. They service roughly 15 to 18 kids. Those are kids who have greater needs, more of a therapeutic need. They meet with this group every day. They have group sessions. Once or twice a week, the student will have an individual session. And it's really to help them prepare themselves to be successful in school and outside of school. It's to meet their needs, and otherwise, if we didn't have this program, many of these students we would be placing out of district in order to meet their needs. So this allows us to keep the students in district, service them in a proper manner. We are looking to bring down the program. We've had it, let's say, about Jack, 5 years now. ESS, you don't know the exact number? 7 years. 7 years we've had it in the high school. We'd like to bring it down to Ridgewood Avenue. We're seeing more students who have this need. It's also going to allow us to look at some of the students that we might have placed out of district to keep them in district. And that's always a goal, is to keep as many students as we can in district. I think from a student point of view, if they can stay here, they want to be here with their peers in the town that they live in. So we're looking to bring them down to Ridgewood Avenue School next year. On April 30th, like I mentioned before, we will present the final budget to the town and to the board for their approval. A lot's going on in that budget, but it's nice to consider that we're staying at 2% cap. We're able to add a few positions without cutting any positions. It's progress. It's a step in the right direction. This time, I'm going to open the floor to the board members first, and then we'll take questions or comments from the public.
Board members, questions? Senator, do you have questions?
Yeah, I was on the second page. Yeah, and then the last one, the second grouping that transfers to cover deficit food service. Can you explain that?
Enterprise fund, you have to run it through a deficit account. That's moving the funds to the fund. No, we're not taking the loss, we're actually making the issue.
Other questions and comments from the board?
Sir, you can just remind us when you think that the health benefit information will come in?
We're expecting the health benefit information coming this week. Once we get that, we'll have the finance committee meet and discuss our options from there. We're looking to keep us at cap and not use a waiver, hopefully, but that's ultimately going to be a recommendation from the finance committee.
Other questions or comments from the board? All right, we'll do our public comment session now, or questions or comments from the audience only. If we can start with budget-related questions and then go on to any other questions that are on agenda items right now. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Hi, Carol Eagle, Oakwood Avenue. I'm sure you said this, I missed it. So the math teacher and the ESS, are those things, and the assistant principal, are those things that are going to happen or would like to have happen?
They are currently in the budget,
Okay.
so
They're accounted for.
they're accounted for in the budget. Once we get health benefit numbers and the finance committee meets again, if our numbers aren't changing, I imagine they would most likely stay in the budget and be up for approval on the 30th.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments? Yes, Peter.
Hi, Peter Harrell. I'm not sure I understood the one chart you had on there where you had the bar chart with the light blue and the dark blue, the funding. And The dark blue was what we were supposed to get pursuant to the statute?
So the total column would be our entire state aid.
Dark blue and light blue together would be the entire amount.
State aid.
Now, the entire amount, and forgive me, I'm just not.
Based
that
on the
versed
school funding formula.
Based on the school funding formula, we're supposed to get a big amount,
Yes,
but we only get
correct.
less of the amount.
Correct.
And this may be apparent to everybody else, but why is it that we don't get that amount?
Well, there are a lot of
Political
reasons.
reasons.
There are a lot of
That's what
reasons.
I assume, but I just wanted
The
to.
SFRA formula, which is what our formula is called, came into being in 2008. It was fully funded that year, which is on the bar
Right.
chart on the left side. It was fully funded because the state government received some ARRA money, ARRA, which was recovery money after the financial crash. Subsequent to that, the state has never been able to afford to fully fund the SFRA formula. And you can see 2010, 2011 school years, we lost everything. That was the first year of the Christie administration. That was when they made a lot of the effects of 2008 were really felt in the 10-11 school year. So every district in the state took 5% across the board cut. For us, that was all of our aid. Since that time, the formula was not run again until last year. So the state government really sort of backed into the funding. They had whatever money they had. They froze categories, they added categories, they made adjustments. But they did not run the formula the way it should be run until last year. When they ran the formula, then last year, they figured out what everybody should have and then gave them a percentage of that. This year, coming year for FY19, they have allegedly run the formula again, and districts across the state, nobody lost money. Some districts gained money like we did, some were held flat. We're about to enter the budget break with the legislature where they will have a tussle between the governor's proposed budget, because remember our state aid numbers are predicated on the governor's proposed budget. The legislature has to figure out, they'll listen to a lot of testimony, they'll have a lot of discussions, they will then figure out and probably work with the governor, we hope, the final budget. We would hope, as you recall last year when the state budget wasn't finished until 4th of July, roundabout, there were some surprises, including the $75,000 extra that we got. There may be surprises. We hope nobody loses money that's expecting money, because all of our budgets are being set now. But we won't know for absolute sure until the budget is settled. But that's the funding story. The state cannot afford to fully fund the formula as it is now.
So that's just sort of the theoretical number. If there was enough money, that's what we would get, but nobody gets that because there's not enough money.
Well, not nobody, but most nobody. Most of the districts in the state do not get their full allotment of funding. There are some ways the formula can be tweaked, but basically it was constructed to meet certain needs. It was constructed so that districts who had more students with higher needs got more money. The funding formula SFRA has been upheld by the state Supreme Court. It meets the needs of the former Abbott districts. So it is a court-approved formula, but the state still can't afford it.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity's sake, why is that one so much bigger in the middle? Yeah, I can't see where it is.
Yeah. I'm not really sure what happened. That's 2014. It looks a lot bigger, but the funding for this came from the Education Law Center, and the funding that year, according to them, was 1.6. We're typically around 1.3, 1.4, so it's roughly 200,000 higher. I'm not sure if that was the way they were running the formula at that time. They seem to tweak it every so often.
They may have included more security aid, because it was post-2012, post-Newtown. So it might have been, that might have been it. Any other questions or comments from the audience? we do not have committee and liaison reports tonight because it is not the first meeting of the month. We do have some administrative items. Mike, would you move the administrative items? May I have a second? Second? Second. Second from Tracy. Okay, any questions or comments on the administrative items, which are investigations of kids? Questions? Okay, Pete, would you call the roll?
Mr. Campbell? Aye. Mr. DeLue? Aye. Ms. Hilberg?
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't here.
Oh, we abstained? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Keppel?
Aye.
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
Mr. Romano?
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubert?
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos?
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg?
Aye.
Motion carries.
David, would you move the personnel items?
Move B1 through B6.
Okay, so that includes the addendum that you have.
Yep.
May I have a second? Second. Second from Ally. In keeping with our rules on confidentiality, all personnel items are discussed in exec session. Pete, would you call the roll?
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. DeLue?
Aye.
Ms. Hilberg?
Aye.
Mr. Keppel?
Aye.
Ms. Lang? Mr. Romano?
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubert?
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos?
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, curriculum. See, I didn't forget you, Michael. Curriculum item. May I have a motion
I
for
will move
curriculum item?
C1.
C1. May I have a second? Second from Heather. Any discussion on the field trip items? No? Peter, would you call the roll?
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. DeLue?
Aye.
Ms. Hilberg?
Aye.
Mr. Keppel?
Aye.
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
Mr. Romano?
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubert?
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos?
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, Tim, would you move business items?
Just a question, Peter, is there a B5 and 6? Just looking at the
Addendum.
The addendum was on B4.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna have to rename.
Renumber it as
Yeah, this is 4, and the last one's 5.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I move B1 through B5.
May I have a second? Second from Paul. Any discussion on business items? Tim, anything you want to comment on?
No, I just, I mean, I think that after so many years of building budgets that you have to decide, who's going to be the loser and what you need to cut. And we're obviously still very pressed for funds, but to have the administration and working with the teachers in the schools to find out how we can possibly expand some of the services and the assistant principal of high school. I'm very pleased to be able to review something like that. So I think the team worked very hard putting that together. So thank you.
Any other board questions or comments before we call the roll? Okay, Pete, would you call the roll?
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. DeLue?
Aye.
Ms. Hilberg?
Aye.
Mr. Keppel?
Aye.
Ms. Lang? Mr. Romano? Ms. St. Aubert?
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos? Ms. Ginsburg?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, we've come very quickly to the second public comment period for comments or questions on agenda or other items. Any questions or comments? Yes, Mrs. Hall.
I believe at the last meeting it was mentioned that you all hoped we would be the owner of the central school by this meeting. Could you provide an update on that, please? Are we the owner? I can't take it or not, since I haven't heard the announcement.
It's actually just maybe a few days away. So we have made our payment for the $5.1 million, and that's been recorded by the county. And then once we had that, we filed the declaration of taking, and so that has been received by the county as well. So the last steps are really just to serve all the stakeholders with a notification that that has been filed, and we expect that to happen this week and get the keys this week. But we'll certainly making it a public announcement when that does actually get 100% finalized. We just got the information before the meeting today. Thanks for that.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Anthony.
Anthony Bonnet, 163. I was looking over the administrative items, and I was just wondering if there has been any trending information on hip incidents in Frederick in general.
On HIPS, any information on the HIPS?
Trend information.
Yeah, we typically, by code, have to present twice a year. Actually, the state has changed their software, so we're just waiting for them to. Typically, February or March, we present our second violence and vandalism report, which includes the HIPs. But since there's been a changeover in the way the state has us filing the HIP reports, we're waiting to hear back from them that it's a go, that we can move ahead with it. We anticipate by the end of April, right, Jack?
The end of April, beginning of May, we should know, yes.
So I basically was up with that.
I think, Anthony, there's also been quite a lot of turnover in the DOE with the change in administration, and that may have something to do also with the delay.
Is the current report on the website?
Yes, the last report is on the website.
So you can review the most recent report on the website, which has trends and stats.
From last year, up through last year.
For this, yeah, for the second half of last year.
Second half, okay.
Yes, Mrs. Song.
Yeah, but when he's asking about trending, you don't need the state to tell us how many HIVs were affirmed or not affirmed. So I don't understand why we wouldn't at least understand the trend without the state computer.
We do look at trends. We do administratively with our HIP specialists. Sometimes we include counselors in it in our administration. Usually a few times during the year we'll meet together. We've had our attorneys come and present on HIP issues. Most of our, the trend seems to be it's more cyber related HIP issues we see. A lot of our HIP issues that we're dealing with are events that are happening outside of school. I'd say with our investigations, we're probably looking at a substantiated HIP, maybe 1 out of every 3 or 4 incidents we are investigating. So I think at this time we're being very thorough about investigating incidents. You know, when we seeing trends such as cyber incidents, those are things that we focus on. Then when it comes to educating the kids, really sort of stressing the importance of what it means to be responsible digital users. Recently we had John Halligan come in and speak to students in grades 5 through 12. Mr. Halligan lost his son to suicide based on some cyberbullying incidents. So when we see the trends, we look for ways to address that with the students. We don't have a large number of confirmed incidents in this district, so trends aren't that obvious at times.
Okay, yes.
Just to clarify, you mentioned that you have a lot of incidents happening outside of school, but the way the law is written, that doesn't necessarily eliminate the school's responsibility.
Correct.
There's a nexus.
We investigate all those, and that's why I addressed them. Those are incidents that we're investigating still, and that's how we know there's a lot of incidents outside of school, because we still have to do those investigations.
But you still have the same time frame for the HIV law or the ADR law that you have to follow when you do an investigation. So I don't really understand why that would delay it if you still have to follow the same timeline.
I'm not saying it is delaying. What I said when he asked about trends, I'm saying that's a trend we're seeing. A lot of our HIB incidents are occurring off school grounds after school hours.
Other questions or